Hey, welcome back everyone. It is now March 3rd of 2020, and ever since the release of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, a lot of fans have been very curious about exactly how Disney and Lucasfilm are going to handle the future of the Star Wars franchise, such as with their new universe and their new trilogy of films throughout this entire decade. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, the one thing about The Rise of Skywalker, if we actually examine this film, of course, before the release on the Blu-ray edition of the movie, a lot of fans have been talking about this lately, of how Kathleen Kennedy interfered with initiating many of the reshoots and the rewrites for Episode 9, and how that also played a major role into this movie really changing into something completely different in comparison to the initial cut of the movie that was going to be more in tune with the past Skywalker saga films. Now, when we look at George Lucas, obviously he was a part of the movie to a certain extent. A lot of his scenes were deleted from the film. He worked very closely with J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio on a number of scenes. And it really does bring one thing to attention here, is that could Palpatine have been done in a far superior way in comparison to how we got Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker? Now, just the other day, it has been officially confirmed that Palpatine was indeed a clone in The Rise of Skywalker, as we learned, and that his spirit is attached to that clone, and that the spirit itself, the dark side itself, ages or kind of destroys the body. That's why it's incomplete, essentially. It's too strong, the spirit of Palpatine. So, what's really intriguing is, of course, now that, of course, Disney and Lucasfilm are all finished with The Rise of Skywalker, they are focused on their new Star Wars trilogy as well as their new Star Wars universe, where it's explained that the production of The Rise of Skywalker was by far the most difficult out of all the sequel trilogy movies for Disney, and that a large part of that had to do with Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy initiating reshoots and rewrites multiple times during production. Now, it's noted that at one point in time, George Lucas had an entire battle scene mapped out for Kylo Ren, Rey, and even the Dark Acolyte and Palpatine that was partially shot back in 2018, before it was cut from the film sometime in 2019. Now, it's noted that the sequence involved Kylo Ren traveling to the world of Exegol, where Palpatine would confront Rey alone inside of his throne room, just as in the final cut of the movie, except major differences applied to the George Lucas version of the grand finale. This would eventually lead to a moment in which Kylo Ren steps into the throne room and warns Rey of manipulation of Palpatine's actual techniques. This is where the 2-on-1 lightsaber battle would begin, where Sidious would shoot lightning against Kylo and Rey, where Kylo was going to use his crossguard to deflect the lightning back at Palpatine, leading to a saber duel where both red lightsabers between Kylo and Palpatine would clash. At one point in time, Rey would assist Kylo Ren to defeat the Emperor, where they both strike him down, using now the Skywalker saber and Leia's, to where Palpatine's spirit would be seen exiting his body. The design of Palpatine's spirit glowed in a red hue, with a Palpatine voice himself being distorted, where he would actually take over the body of the Dark Acolyte and take on a young host to fight both Kylo Ren and Rey in the meantime. This would lead to a sequence in which the Acolyte would be killed by Kylo and the spirit would possess Rey at first, but could not stay within her as she was not connected to the dark side enough with anger, and hops out of Rey to only go into Kylo Ren, where Ren begs Rey to kill him, where Rey stabs him with Kylo's saber. This was the original redemption of Kylo Ren, at one point becoming Ben Solo, where they kiss as he dies from the wound, and Palpatine's spirit that would actually take the energy out of him. So, George Lucas, we do know that there were 2 initial cuts of Episode 9 before the finalized version of the movie. They went through a lot of different endings for Episode 9. One of them in particular was this one that was actually done by George Lucas. Now, Palpatine's spirit, though we never really got to see this thing full on in the actual sequel trilogy, but we also got to learn a little bit more about it recently, because Star Wars unveiled that, yes, Palpatine's spirit was a part of Palpatine's clone. So, the thing about Palpatine's spirit, this is essentially essence transfer. It's basically the same exact thing from Star Wars Legends. In Legends, we had a technique called essence transfer, where you could transfer your consciousness from one body to the other. Palpatine did this with a series of clones in the Dark Empire comics back in the 1990s, and you can see where J.J. Abrams got the idea from. Now, it's very unfortunate we never got to see Matt Smith's portrayal as the Dark Acolyte early on. We saw his name attached to all the international StarWars.com websites before he was removed from those sites because of the reshoots and the rewrites. Very unfortunate we did not get to see Palpatine Spirit in action, actually seeing the death of old Palpatine and then the Spirit hopping into a younger version of a host, or just a regular Dark Acolyte, if you will, not a young version of Palpatine, but just a young host that was a Dark Acolyte. Then that would eventually hop into Rey for a second, only to be rejected and then going back into Kylo Ren. Interesting, I gotta say, I mean, it's very unfortunate we did not get to see this version by George, so let me know what you guys have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to morning.